And let's get started. Our first exercise is to create the cover of our workbook. And we will warm up our drawing skills here as well. And I know for a fact, by talking to a lot of people who are new to visual thinking and sketching and sketchnoting, is that their biggest blocker preventing them from entering the world of visual thinking and sketchnoting is their fear of drawing. People are scared because they don't know if they're going to be good enough, and I'm going to use a warm-up exercise that is going to prove to you that you shouldn't be scared or worried at all, and all you can do that. We will draw our faces. In this exercise, you're going to create your own portrait, and all you need to do is just to follow my basic steps toward achieving the goals of the exercise. And I'm going to explain those steps one by one, and you will see it's very simple and easy to do. I'm going to use these extra sheets of paper here to illustrate what I'm doing. For now, we only need our technical pens and the workbook. But additionally to that, I'm going to use some sticky notes and index cards for extra explanations. So you don't have to do that on the workbook, but you can watch me instructing you how to do the steps. Let's start with the step number one. The step number one is where we create the face. So the face. We're going to draw a face as large as probably this area here on the cover of your workbook, and you're doing that by just simply drawing an oval. So you need to draw an oval like that. And let's say we agree to create an oval of the face as large as probably your 4 fingers on your hand. So put your technical pen and create an oval. As simple as something like that. Not too big, not too small. Now you don't have to be worried about the evenness of this oval. It doesn't have to be precise or super accurate. And maybe you want to give it a try a few times before you do that. But all in all, don't worry. It doesn't have to be super pretty. It doesn't have to be ideal. And over time, as you practice more and more, your ovals and other types of shapes will become better and better. So just put an oval somewhere here in the middle and closer to the top of the page. And that's the step number one. Let's proceed with step number two. The step number two is where we place the eyes on that face. So step number two. And I will show you how it's done. The eyes. Now, by that moment in time, you already have an oval. And the placement of the eyes is important because it has to reflect the reality as well. And one thing you probably don't know is that that imaginable line that divides the face into halves is where the actual eyes are placed. So you need to imagine that line that divides the face in 2 halves, and then you need to put your eyes there. And you're doing that by simply drawing a couple of large dots or maybe a couple of dashes like this. And you need to place it somewhere on that line here. I would do something like this. Those would be the eyes. Now let's look at the workbook. Let's say the line that divides the face into halves is somewhere here. So go ahead and put a couple of dashes right there. Okay, that was easy, wasn't that? Let's move on to the next step, which is about the nose. So step number 3, the nose. Okay, so by now we have a face with a couple of dashes for the eyes. And what about the nose? Well, as far as the nose element of the face, you put it here, right? And that's the step where you can go and be different a bit. because sometimes the nose can be long and pointy, it can be a more rounded one, it can be a shorter one as well, it can be of a different shape, and the basic rule here is that don't try to overdo this, and don't try to be super realistic, but just try to find which shape approximates the uniqueness of your nose the best. So I usually draw my nose something like this, not too long, not too short, pointy one. So I will go ahead and draw my nose here. Okay, you see the face emerging. Let's proceed to the next step now. And the next step, the step number 4, is where we're going to talk about the mouth. So how do you draw mouth? Well, that is a very simple step. And my general recommendation is to draw a mouth as simple as just a smiley. So a smiley mouth. As simple as that. What you should be watching out for is to avoid shapes like this and that, because that could convey some not so positive emotions on your face, and you don't want that. Alternatively, you can go with different types of mouth. So for example, an open one where you can also see a tongue, and just black out the empty space, and you can be creative here. But just putting a simple smiley is also an option, something like that. Okay, let's move on. Step number 5. Step number 5 is where we are going to create the ears. So how do you create ears? Well, we also need to remember that middle line we were talking about, the one that informed the position of the eyes. And as for the ears, you usually start your ear shape somewhere here, where the line divides the face into halves. And again, as with the nose, the ear can be conveying different unique features of yours. It can be rounded, it can be more square, it can be smaller, it can be bigger, and sometimes I even joke that it could be an elf ear as well. Yes, something like that. But again, just remember to place it properly. The ear starts here. So that's where it starts. So where you connect your ear. Yes? Okay. Now if that is clear, I want to find the line which I use to position the eyes properly. And in my case, I usually draw ears like this. And that's usually good enough. Okay? On to the next step. The next step is the brows. And it's going to be a super simple step, because we're not going to make them too detailed, too elaborate. Now, that's how far we got with the face so far. And as for the brows, we just need to place them above the eyes. And you may think about different things. For example, do you want shorter brows? Do you want longer ones? Do you have this type of a monobrow? Or maybe you want to make them a bit thicker. Just think about that, and this is where you place them. Place brows here. Now, what you would like to watch out for is again their shape. The brow's shape informs the emotion on the face, and be careful with the combinations like this or like that, because these types of brow's combinations can create a negative emotion, and we don't want to look hostile on our portraits. So just go ahead and place a brow like this here and another one like this here. Okay, let's move on to the next step. The next step is going to be a bit more challenging than any of the previous ones, and that's the step number 7 already. And on this step, we're going to draw hair. Drawing hair is difficult and challenging, but I will show you how you can simplify the process while maintaining more or less okay or even nice result. The way you can go with the hair is 2 ways. So way number 1. You can go with your face by just quickly sketching out the general direction of the hairstyle and also the nature of the hair itself. Is it straight or is it curvy? And that is a super simple and super fast way to draw hair, and usually I do that when I draw small faces. When it comes to larger faces, like this one here, I would go with a bit more elaborate way of drawing hairstyle, where I would start with the general shape of the hairstyle, something like that. And then once I've outlined the general outline of the hair, then I would fill it with the hair type that is specific to this person. So for example, if the hair is straight, I would go something like this. And if it's curvy hair, let's take another situation. Let's say of a more generic male hairstyle. I would use something like that for the curvy hairstyle. And you can choose which way you would like to use, and maybe even practice on the side a couple of them to choose the one that you prefer the most. I would also want to show a few other things that relate to the hairstyle, which is about the facial hair, mustache and beards, things like that, and maybe a person who hasn't shaved for some days. In that case, the approach is the same. So let's say that's your face where you start the exercise, and if the mustache is there, you could just outline the general shape and then fill in with the hairstyle. Or maybe the person hasn't shaved in days, and then you could just show that by placing a few dots here and there, just to show that there is hair, but it's not that much. And of course you can mix and match different things to reflect the unique face of the person. One thing you need to keep in mind though is that you need to maintain the simplicity. Keep it simple as you can. Meaning that use the least number of lines to reflect the nature of the hairstyle. Don't go too crazy, don't go too elaborate, too detailed. That will take a lot of time and will kill the fun of it. So getting back to my portrait here, I usually go with my hair like this. I just put a lot of small sticks to reflect the short hairstyle I prefer, and maybe even add a bit more of them to show that there is a certain depth in play. And I don't like to shave, So I would put a lot of dots here and there on my face to show that. And then I also have sideburns that reflect my unique personality. And I just put the sideburns something like this. Yeah. So now go ahead and maybe even pause the video to complete your hairstyle. It might take a bit longer compared to other steps. And when you're ready, we can switch to the next step, which is the step number 8 already. And in this step, we're going to talk about accessories. What are accessories? The accessories which we are fishing for are the ones that influence the look and feel and the unique identity of yours. Things like jewelry, tattoos, piercing, tunnels in your ears, and most commonly, the glasses. If you are a person who wears glasses, then you need to keep in mind that it's important to draw glasses because the glasses also are a part of your unique identity. And when you draw glasses, the most important thing to remember is that the shape of the glasses is very important, and that's the feature that is used by other people to identify you as a unique person quickly. And you need to make sure that you draw the shape of your glasses as close to how they look in real life as possible. And they can come in different shapes. For example, they can be rounded like this, or they can be square and narrow like this. And sometimes they can have a more elaborate shape. So you need to check your glasses and see what is the shape that defines them and be as close to that shape as possible. Another advice for people who are drawing faces with glasses is that usually it's easier to draw the glasses first and then fill in the eyes in them. It's easier. Then you can also control the placement of the eyes within the frame of eyeglasses. And that will allow you to avoid a situation where it looks a bit weirdly. Something like this. And as far as other unique features, just try to find the simplest way to reflect that unique feature of your face and use the simplest possible shape to approximate that unique feature. Alright, so I don't wear glasses, I don't have tattoos or piercing or any jewelry, so I'm going to skip this part, and then you can put the video on pause and finish off this step to reflect the unique features from the accessories part of the guideline. And then lastly, we will continue on to the next step, which is the step number 9. That's the last step of the guideline. And this is where we are going to finish off the portrait. We're going to draw things like neck and some clothing features. So neck plus clothing. What we're going to do here is that we're going to start with our neck, and according to the anatomy of a human body, the neck is equal to the width of the head. But that would look awkward and weird. So we don't try to create the picture that is in full compliance with how the human anatomy requires these things to be drawn. Instead, we would like to use a bit more subtle drawing for the neck, And I advise you to draw a neck something a bit thinner, not like the head width, but something like that instead. So keep some free space to the left and to the right. And then once you're done with the stem of the neck, just add a bit of the shoulders. And when you're done with that, what you can also do is that you can finish off with the neck shape of the clothing that you're wearing. Something like that for a t-shirt, or something looking like that for a shirt collar, and maybe you're wearing a kind of a jacket or something, and you can add those features as well. So for example, something like that, or maybe the lapels of the jacket if you're wearing a suit. But again, keep it simple. Don't overdo things. Okay? So getting back to my workbook cover, I'm going to add a neck, as we discussed, leaving some space to the left and to the right, not to make it look too massive like here. And then I will just continue slightly to the left and to the right, and I will create a neckline for the t-shirt, because usually I wear t-shirts, and just a bit of a couple more lines. And basically that's it. We have accomplished the part with drawing the face, and now we can get to some gold plating. We're going to gold plate it a bit. And you remember I mentioned that the brush pens are really optional, but I'm going to use them throughout the course. And even if you don't have them, I'm going to show you how I use them. And if you do have them, just follow me along. And I'll start with the light gray. And one thing you can do with the light gray is that you can intensify the light, not the light, but the color of your hair. So for example, you can draw over your hairstyle, and in that manner you will show that the color of hair is a bit different from the color of skin. You can use the light gray for that purpose. But I also use light gray to lay some shadows to give the picture a bit of a volume. So I will create a shadow behind the head and the torso and the neck. But I will also create a bit of the shadow inside, something like that, and behind the chin, sorry, not behind, but under the chin and on the side of the neck. And I will put a slight shadow here on the shoulder as well. Now doing that will give my face, my portrait, a bit of a volume, and it will pop up, and it will be easier for a person to distinguish that from the background. We're almost done here. We will need to add a few more words to explain what this booklet is about. So let's write something like visual thinking, and sketchnoting, workbook, because that's what it is. And you can also add by and put your name below, because you are the author of your workbook. But I will put my name below it. So workbook by Yuri Malyshenko. Yes? And I will use the yellow brush pen to highlight important parts like visual thinking and sketchnoting. And I will experiment with a single line below workbook and Yuri Malyshenko. So that concludes our warm-up exercise, where we have looked into how to create a face, a portrait, and we now also have a nice looking cover art for your workbook. So now that you're going to carry it around and show it to your friends and colleagues, it will be clear what this workbook is about. I hope you enjoyed that, and we can proceed with the next video now.